What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 short squeeze stocks that you need to add to your watch list going into this upcoming week. So I'm going to go over all the things that you need to know, but first make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So starting off with stock number 5, not in any particular order, ticker is APLD, so Applied Digital, currently sitting at 27.85, over the last 1 year up 246%, and then over the last 5 days up 9.49. So generally I like to pick stocks that have some good pre-existing momentum, and in many cases shorts just being overextended. If you like more of the quantitative data, feel free to kind of pause it and go through it, so it has valuation, growth, profitability, momentum, and also revisions. But in case you're curious what this company does, this is it. So internet services and infrastructure, 205 employees, founded in good old Dallas, Texas. Right now, 34.41% of the free float's being shorted. Works out to be 83.03 million shares overall being shorted. Cost to borrow is kind of on the low end, so the average is 0.97%. On a side note, that is an annual rate, not a daily rate. DTC being at 2.64 days, that does signal that shorts are relatively overextended. DTC factors in the average volume in comparison to number of shares being shorted. And then short score is 69.08. And just generally looking at what shorts have been doing for pretty much all of 2025, they've been lingering between that 31 and like 35% range. So they've been holding on for dear life despite the actual stock price really appreciating. One final thing I do want to share with you though is through IBKR, it does indicate roughly around 650,000 shares is available to be shorted. Sometimes if a stock is limited supply, you could be seeing some buying from big players just for the purposes of lending out the stock. In this case, because of cost to borrow being fairly low, most likely that won't be kind of the case, but still, again, as something to keep in mind. But moving on from here, next stock is RIVN, so ticker RIVN, sitting at 22.45. And I do believe this is the first time ever a EV has been on this list, because of course, EVs haven't really done that great over the last several years, with the exception of Tesla, but of course, I don't think it's ever been heavily shorted lately, aside from 2018 and 2019 and prior. But yeah, RIVN's definitely doing very well, so it's kind of the shining star among EVs right now. Over the last 1 year up 71.9%, and then over the last 5 days up 20.21. Based on this is what they do, in case you don't know. But right now, 18.34% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 147.82 million shares overall being shorted. As I mentioned, DTC being at 3.09 definitely does signal that shorts are overextended. But RIVN is an interesting stock, only because there's a couple levels of sketchy activity kind of that is happening. So one is this: cost to borrow minimum is negative. So that does mean that there is a broker out there physically paying people to short RIVN. So that is kind of sketchy point number one. Sketchy point number two is this. So shares on loan being 145.48 million, right? And number of shares being shorted, 147. There should never be a scenario where there is more shares being shorted than on loan. So this is actually a case of naked shorting. So you kind of have two sketchy things happening behind the scenes, so something again to keep in mind. Through IBKR, about 2.8 million shares. So there is a sufficient amount of shares, and plus cost to borrow is rather low, so most likely you won't be seeing any buying over this upcoming week. So let me know your thoughts on RIVN being on this list. Moving on to the next one, ticker is LUNR, Intuitive Machines, sitting at 14.94. Over the last 1 year, it is up 16.9, and then over the last 5 days, it is up 25.21%. So definitely getting a lot of volume, so it's getting on a lot of people's radar. This is the company profile, so aerospace and defense, based out of good old Houston, Texas. 22.7% of the free float's being shorted. Works to be 25.5 million shares overall being shorted. Cost to borrow, again, no different than the last two, rather on the low end, 1.1. DTC though definitely does signal that they're overextended, 3.57 days. On a side note, there's also a lot of good information up top here that I'm not necessarily bringing up, so feel free to pause it or even look at the chart if necessary, if that's your kind of thing. Short score 71.06, and then through IBKR, it does indicate a roughly around 200,000 shares, and you could be seeing some buying, but again, cost to borrow is kind of on the low end, so it might not be in kind of big institutions' interest to buy. Moving on to the next one, we have ticker LITE, currently sitting at 371 and change. Over the last 1 year, it is up 344%. Absolutely epic stuff. I actually did post this on my Patreon as a buy when it was close to about the $110 range, and I signaled, I think it was like 140. Obviously I didn't see the big picture, and clearly there must have been something operational happen in October that caused all this, but definitely this stock is doing very well. Over the last 5 days alone, it is up roughly 9%. This is what they do. On a side note, so feel free to pause and go through it. 18.83% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 13.24 million shares overall being shorted. Short score 63.95, and then as well, kind of shorts for the most part throughout 2025 have been just holding on for dear life. That seems to be a more of a common scenario among all the stocks so far, is that whoever is shorting them definitely has some fairly deep pockets. DTC sitting at 3.01 days, and then through IBKR does indicate about 750,000 shares. So no different than the other ones. You might not be seeing any significant buying, but still nonetheless there's a lot of good pre-existing momentum behind the scenes. And then last but not least, we too have ticker LAZR. So this one I think is a little bit more on the speculative side, so I wanted to kind of throw this one in there. On Friday alone, it went up 174%, and it's kind of pulling back a little bit after hours on the Friday, but over the last 1 year, it is down 88.99%, and then over the last 5 days, still down 31%. So this one, again, definitely might be a little bit more on the speculative side, but nonetheless, this is a company profile, so automotive parts and equipment. And right now, 23.4% of the free float is being shorted, works to be 16.8 million shares. Cost to borrow is kind of on, not necessarily overly high, but 88.32. DTC, 2.15 days. Short score is 83.62. And then through IBKR, it does indicate roughly around, looks like one single share is available. So potentially in this case, you definitely could be seeing some buying going into this upcoming week, as big money will buy the stock just for the purposes of lending it out to get potentially 58.82. That's what IBKR kind of charges. So nonetheless, add all these stocks to your watch list. Definitely, I think RIVN is a shocker that it actually made this list. But again, there's a lot of sketchy stuff happening behind the scenes. So let me know your thoughts on all these stocks. One final thing, just for this weekend alone, I did lower the price on one of my tiers. So if you're looking for a lot of good buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, definitely pop over here. So I lowered it from 50 to now $20 just for this weekend alone. So definitely take advantage, sign up, link in the description below and also the comments. On a side note, actually, if you do sign up, your price will never increase. So you're going to be locked and loaded. So definitely take a look at that. So with all that said, appreciate all of you watching.